And next up, we have the wonderful Michael Weinberg, who will never be free from Oshawa no matter what he does.
What's up? How's the live stream?
Michael has been a board member for ever?
For 1,000 years.
It's time before time. Time before time.
And he is our #1 certification database manager. So when you send in your certs,
Michael's
he's
looking
the
at
guy.
them.
He's the guy. He's looking at him going, that's a certification for sure.
Certified, certified, not certified.
No.
But usually certified.
Usually certified.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what is certification, Michael?
Yeah, Michael, tell us a little. Tell us more.
I'm going to tell you about certification, and then I have a little surprise.
Ooh.
That isn't very exciting, but it's a surpise nonetheless because I didn't tell either of you about it.
I'm feeling excited and surprised.
It is. It's good you're sitting down because it's certification related, so that'll be a surprise. But that'll be shocking news. So, but what is certification? So certification, actual certification, is all about being able to tell people that your open hardware is open hardware like the OSHWA definition of open hardware. Because the problem before the certification was you had people saying this is open hardware and people expecting something to be open hardware, but their definitions may not have been the same. And so with the certification, we can say, look, OSHWA is the steward of the community definition of open hardware. And if your hardware meets the definition, then you can apply for a certification. You can get that certification for free. And then you get to use the logo and you get a unique identifier. And the unique identifier will help people find your documentation in the certification directory. So it's a great system. Also, if you're new to OSHWA, you're new to open hardware, and you're like, I think this is open hardware, but I'm not sure, send it in. Try and certify it. And if you haven't done all the things right, we don't just say, no, you can't do this. But we start a conversation with you and we help you walk through all of the steps that you might need to take. So I can, let's see how fluent I'm feeling about sharing screens and clicking various things. So I'm going to, how about share this screen? Let's see. So this is the certification page. So you can see a thing that people don't realize. I think actually we're gonna improve fairly soon. Is if you click on what is certification, it does more than just tell you what certification is. It actually explains to you how the different pieces of open hardware fit together. So you can learn about hardware. If you have questions about like what licensing you should be using, there's a bunch of information about licenses for all the different kinds of all the pieces, so the hardware, the software, the documentation. So there's branding. There's a bunch of information here it's a little bit hidden, and we're working on that, but you should check out the what is certification page. But the main thing you probably care about, well, the two main things you probably care about are certifying a project, and then also who else is certified. So this is the certification application. It takes maybe like 5 minutes to fill out. And it goes through, it asks a bunch of questions about who is certifying it, what the deal with the hardware is. If you're doing a new piece of hardware or an update to an existing certified piece of hardware, you can fill in your existing UID, so we can kind of link everything. We can talk about what the project is, what the website is, all the different kinds of project types. This makes it easier for people to find your hardware in the directory. Give it some keywords. If you're building off other certified hardware, you can kind of click through and say like, this is what I built on. So give people some credit and kind of build out this web of certification. And then you can talk about what licenses you're using. Well, I mean, 5 to 40 minutes. Maybe it takes 40 minutes. Maybe it takes an hour. I mean, I don't know. Like it depends how much you want to marinate in the process. So I don't want to say that you have to go through quickly, but you can go through quickly. If you're not sure about hardware, you can look and see there's some example licenses that people have used. Also, if you're not sure about the licensing, one kind of like easy fix is if you go to the directory and you find somebody who you kind of trust, you can see what they chose and you can just copy them. That's also totally fine. And then some like last kind of mop-up questions to make sure that you did everything right. The answer to all these questions should be yes. If the answer is no, it's an opportunity to pause and reflect. Be like, maybe I should change what I'm doing so the answer to that question is yes. And then you click yes, I agree to all these terms. I understand that I am doing this. And the reason that actually we have all these kind of agreements is because when you get certified, you get a license from OSHWA to use the certification logo. And so the reason this is like an actual agreement is because it gives you the power to be able to use the certification logo and to be able to use the use your UID. So that's why there are these checkboxes that go through. You hit submit, and then our goal is to get you a response within 14 days. It's often faster than that, but usually we can get initial responses within 14 days. If everything is good, you'll get your UID and you'll be on your way. If there are questions that we have, we'll send you an email with questions and we'll go back and forth as many times as you want to try and get stuff worked out. And then once you are certified, you end up in the certification directory. And so this is a directory of all the things that are certified, 3,154 as of this moment, from I think we're over maybe even like 70 different countries. We're at the point. Oh, this doesn't show up in the live stream when I if you click here, you can see the list of all the countries. We're actually at the point now where when we're certifying something new, sometimes we're like, oh, bet that's the first thing from this country, and it's like, oh no, wait, there's already like 5 things from that country. But you can click through and pick the country. So if you want to see, what is everything that is certified from Canada, or everything that is certified from Azerbaijan, all of these countries with further down the alphabetical list, Mexico. You can choose by product type. You can also choose by license. And so this is a kind of great way to explore what's happening in certified hardware and find things. You can also sort them by certification date, all of these things. And when you click through, each object has a page. This is where the unique identifier becomes really useful. Because if you have a project's unique identifier, then you can find this page that will have information about the piece of hardware that's certified, the licenses, a link to the project website, also a link to the documentation. So this is we don't kind of get all the information and we don't ask people to upload all the information to the certification directory, but the directory has pointers to websites and documentation and things like that. And so it's a great way to kind of get information. And I mentioned earlier, if you get certified, you get the license to use this certification mark with your own unique identifier that can be used to map back to this. So that's a certification. Another thing about the certification that is fun is that it has an API. And the API is a read-write API. So if you're thinking to yourself, it takes me 40 minutes to fill out the certification form, but for almost all my hardware, it's kind of the same. You can get an API key and actually just build submitting the certification application into your workflow. You can automate the entire thing. You can send stuff in automatically. We have people who do that, and it's really great. And then you can also use the read API if you want to learn about what's in the directory and what's going on there. And so one of the things that I did, here's the surprise. One of the things that I did is I said, okay, well, I wonder how people, because like this is who I am, how people's use of licenses have changed since 2016 when we first had the certification. And so I used the API to pull down all of the data for all of the pieces of certified hardware and explore all of the different kinds of licenses people have used. Now, because I'm a lawyer and I'm not a like data visualization person, I did the boring thing and I just made a bunch of like leader boards. So I just posted this actually just on my website. because that's the place to post it. That is all of the licenses for each year back to 2016. And so you can see which licenses have gone up, which licenses have gone down, which are most popular, which tend to be less popular, kind of where they were before. So API, okay, so the API, there's a banner at the top of the certification page. It's just right there. So, like it's a little bit not on me, I will say. But so you can find out, and like I went through it and say, like, okay, so in 2025, obviously this is the numbers. Go back for these are all the licenses used for hardware, software, and documentation, all the way through. And you can kind of see the evolution over time. And one of the things you can see is when new licenses, there's sort of two big changes in this data set. One is when some new licenses were introduced, especially the CERN version 2 licenses were introduced. And the other thing that happened is, I think in 2021, we really started to use standardized terms for the licenses. There's these SPDX identifiers for different like open source software licenses and open source hardware licenses. And so I think over time, our data is going to get better because we moved towards these standardized licenses. So you can see the leaderboard for all licenses. And then you can also, there are kind of links at the top, so you have to scroll down. You can see kind of just in hardware. So what licenses do people use for their hardware? And this is I think this is good, right? The CERN licenses, which are licenses written specifically for hardware, those tend to be at the top. I think this other is actually just MIT licenses that people applied to everything. And so one thing that I did after I started pulling this data was I added MIT as a more explicit option. And so you can actually see it's like already starting to populate down here. But you can see that kind of the CERN licenses, the CC licenses, and then other that probably represent well-known, very open source software licenses tend to be pretty popular and tend to be clustered towards the top. Although there are oldies but goodies, like the taper licenses, those are still being used, solder pads still being used. And you can kind of see over time, someone who's better at data visualization may almost certainly can do something more interesting with this data, make a bunch of leaderboards. But you can see back in 2016, we basically had three options, right? Because we were just like other or CERN or taper. You can also see how many fewer certifications we did in 2016. For software, same thing. These are licenses that, if you're in this world, you probably will recognize. It won't be a surprise that, or at least, it wasn't a surprise to me that MIT was the most popular. People are just kind of like, do whatever you want. All I want is credit. Do it, go crazy. And then the GPL is also kind of right behind it, which is a much more kind of copyleft kind of license. There are a couple other distortions in the data. Right around 2020, 2021, with the pandemic, we saw a kind of surge of people certifying, and Adafruit especially made a really concerted effort to certify a bunch of their hardware. And so their choices about licenses, I think, probably distort the numbers in 2021. You can see Adafruit does a lot of MIT, and so you can see that it just like really clusters those 2 years because they were going through and certifying kind of everything. And then for documentation, also not surprisingly, Creative Commons, these are licenses that people are really familiar with. This is a world that people are familiar with. Those tend to be at the top. And then once you get below the Creative Commons licenses, you either have people who are applying a CERN license, right? The CERN licenses are designed to cover the hardware, the software, the documentation, everything. So that makes sense as a license that you would use, or a well-known open source software license, and people just kind of apply it once and throw it to the repo. So if you are curious about all of this, kind of what licenses people have used, you can go to michaelweinberg.org and check out the blog post that I did. You can also just use the API yourself. If you think to yourself, okay, I don't want to deal with the API, but also I'm unimpressed with Michael's visualizations, there's also a link to a repo that has some tools for using the API to be able to get the data yourself, and all of the various kinds of outputs that the tools create And so if you want to do your own visualization, but you don't want to use the API, then you can find kind of up-to-date, or up-to-date as of the last time I ran the scripts and updated the repo, up-to-date kind of snapshots in a couple different formats of the different kinds of hardware that people have used. And so these are all things that you can check out. And if you want to go deeper into what's happening in the directory, this is a great way to do it. Obviously, there are depending on who you are, there are potentially more interesting things to explore in the data about the directory than just the licensing information, depending on like who you are and what you're into. And so you can also use the API to pull all sorts of other data and think of other ways to visualize it. I know for a while there was some people who had they were just monitoring the API constantly, and they would have like a ping or a counter for different countries for when new things got certified, or just to kind of have like a little world map that you could have your own world map to see what is certified. The API is actually also what we use to on the Okta website. This map is also drawing from the API, and so you can see this heat map to see where we have certified things. And then if you want to know more, that's when you go to the directory and you can dig down into the list. But you can see, the Okta certification continues to grow, and we continue to see people from all over the world. And the distribution isn't necessarily what you would think, right? I mean, it may not be a surprise that the United States has the most, but people who are in the know that Bulgaria has a huge number of certifications, especially I think per capita. My guess would be that Bulgaria has the most certifications. There's a couple maker spaces in India that are constantly certifying interesting things that people who are, especially the younger students who are part of that makerspace, are up to. So that's really cool to see them and see what they're up to. You can really explore. You can you can find your country and you can see if you have anything, if your country is represented, or you can be number one, or you can kind of travel the world and see oh, I wonder what's happening in Slovenia, right? What's happening in Norway? What's happening in Indonesia, and just see what's going on in the open hardware culture. If you're traveling to one of these places and you want to find some people who are doing open hardware, the directory and the map are just great places to go to see those things. So this is the exciting world right now of OSHA certification. If you want to be in this directory, you can just go and apply for free. It should be super straightforward. And yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what's happening in the world of certification.
And we love that. I actually loved that data so much.
Yeah, that was a great surprise.
I feel like there's some data freaks in the chat. Data freaks, rise up.
Yeah, don't be afraid.
Yeah. We'll drop a link to your website in there, and people can dig through and have a look.
And also get to enjoy the data to its fullest.
Yeah, let us know if you do a cool visualization. I originally downloaded it hoping to do a cool visualization, and then I was defeated trying to set up Jupyter notebooks, and I was like, okay, this is what we got.
Pulling the data and then making a visualization are two very
completely
different skill sets.
Yeah. To know me is to know I'm not a visual person. So I just kind of I enjoy people. Oh, there's Leon representing Bulgaria. There we go. Yeah, exactly.
Leon representing Bulgaria.
Oh, yeah.
Bulgaria's going off on those certs.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. That was really great. It's always good to see all the progress and all the different especially how the certifications are distributed around the world. I feel like that's really evolving, and it's super, super good to see. So.
And we're slowly getting into many countries.
Yeah,
we got our first Algerian certification this month.
Oh yeah,
that was cool.
That's amazing.
It just keeps going.
Still waiting on Antarctica, the last continent we are not on. So at every opportunity, I say, if you are in Antarctica or you know someone in Antarctica, we want to certify a piece of hardware so we can get all 7 continents.
We'll do anything. We'll help. Yeah. We'll fill out the form for you.
Yeah.
Whatever
you
need.
We want Antarctica. We'll hold your hands.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, and we will definitely be hearing from you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.